The mahogany table at Chez Laurent stretched before me like an accusation. 12 place settings glinting under the crystal chandeliers, each one a monument to my stupidity. I'd arrived 30 minutes early, wanting everything to be perfect when my family walked through those etched glass doors. Now, at 2:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, I sat alone among the empty chairs, watching the candles burn down and the ice sculptures weep. My name is Alexander Wright. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a software engineer at a tech startup in San Francisco. It's the kind of job my family never understood. Playing with computers, my father called it, as if I were still the 8-year-old taking apart calculators at the kitchen table. But it paid well enough that I could afford this gesture, this attempted bridge across the chasm that had opened between us over the years. $5,000 for a Thanksgiving dinner that no one bothered to attend. The reservation had been made 3 months in advance. Chez Laurent didn't just accept walk-ins, especially not on Thanksgiving. I'd sent the invitations out in October, beautiful cream cardstock with gold embossing, because I wanted them to know this mattered, that they mattered. That despite the distance, emotional more than geographical, I still considered them family. My mother had texted back, "We'll see, sweetie. You know how busy November gets." My father hadn't responded at all, but Mom assured me she'd handle him. My younger brother Marcus had sent a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else, just that yellow cartoon hand that somehow managed to convey less interest than no response at all. My sister Jennifer had called, which felt promising until I realized she was just confirming the restaurant had vegan options. "You know how Trevor is about his diet?" she'd said about her husband, as if I'd met him more than twice in the 3 years they'd been married. But they'd all said yes eventually. Grudgingly, maybe, but yes. "We'll be there, Alexander. Thank you for arranging this. It'll be nice to have the family together." The waiter, Francois, according to his name tag, approached for the 4th time, his expression professionally sympathetic. "Monsieur Wright, perhaps you would like to order? The kitchen is concerned about timing for the prix-fixe menu." "They're just running late," I said, the words tasting more bitter each time I repeated them. "Traffic. You know how it is on holidays." He nodded, too polite to point out that I'd been saying the same thing for 47 minutes. "Of course, monsieur. Shall I bring more bread?" "Sure." What did it matter? The artisanal sourdough would just join the other untouched basket, getting cold and hard like everything else I'd tried to offer my family. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through the messages I'd sent over the last hour. 2 p.m. "Hey everyone. I'm here. Table's ready whenever you arrive." 2:15 p.m. "Everything okay? Let me know if you're having trouble finding the place." 2:30 p.m. Starting to worry. "Is everyone all right?" 2:45 p.m. "Please just let me know you're safe." All delivered. All read. All ignored. The restaurant hummed with other families' joy. At the table next to mine, a grandmother was telling stories that had her grandchildren giggling into their cranberry sauce. Across the room, a father raised a toast to his adult children, thanking them for making the trip home. The soundscape of functional families, the foreign language I'd never quite learned to speak. I was about to give up, to ask Francois for the check and slink home to my empty apartment, when my phone buzzed. Finally, I thought, an explanation, an apology, something. But it wasn't a text. It was an Instagram notification. Jennifer had posted to her story. I opened it with trembling fingers and felt my heart plummet through the restaurant's marble floor. There they were, all of them. My mother, my father, Marcus, Jennifer, and Trevor, even my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Dan, gathered around Jennifer's dining room table, raising glasses of wine, smiling like they'd won the lottery. The caption read, "So grateful for family. Hashtag blessed, hashtag Thanksgiving tradition, hashtag family first." The timestamp showed it had been posted 5 minutes ago. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't running late. They were together, celebrating Thanksgiving without me, and they were so unconcerned about my feelings that Jennifer had posted it publicly, knowing I'd see it. Monsieur, Francois had returned, and I realized I was crying. Silent tears sliding down my face, dripping onto the pristine white tablecloth. Is everything all right? No, I said, surprising us both with my honesty. Everything is not all right. My family, they're not coming. His professional mask slipped, revealing genuine sympathy. I am very sorry, monsieur. Would you like me to adjust the reservation? I guess. I looked at the empty table, at all the hope I'd spread across it like a feast no one wanted. I guess just bring me a meal. One meal. Whatever the chef recommends. Of course. And monsieur? The wine pairings? Shall I? Yes, I said, because if I was going to sit here in my humiliation, I might as well be thoroughly numbed. All of them. He retreated, and I was left alone with my phone and the photographic evidence of my family's betrayal. I scrolled through Jennifer's story again, masochistic, looking for details. There was the turkey mom always made, dry as the Sahara but traditional. There was the green bean casserole Marcus pretended to hate but always ate seconds of. There was Dad in his Thanksgiving sweater, the hideous thing with the turkey on it that we used to mock together. All their traditions carried on without me, as if I'd never existed, as if I weren't sitting 40 minutes away, waiting for them at a table that cost more than some people's rent. The wine arrived first, a crisp white that Francois poured with ceremonial precision. I drank it too fast, letting it burn away the lump in my throat. This wasn't the first time I'd been excluded, I realized. Just the first time I'd been foolish enough to pay $5,000 for the privilege of witnessing it. There had been other gatherings I'd learned about after the fact. The weekend in Tahoe last summer that was just a spontaneous thing. The celebration for Marcus's promotion that was just drinks with a few people. Jennifer's baby shower that I discovered through Facebook, where my invitation had apparently been lost in the mail. But I'd always made excuses for them, always found ways to rationalize the exclusions. They forgot. They thought I was busy. They didn't think I'd be interested. The mental gymnastics of the unwanted child, forever trying to earn a place at the table. The appetizer arrived, seared foie gras with a pomegranate reduction, and I ate it mechanically, tasting nothing. Francois refilled my wine glass without being asked, a small kindness that nearly broke me. Here was a stranger showing more consideration for my feelings than my own family. You know, I said to him, the wine loosening my tongue. I used to think it was because I was gay. That's why they kept me at arm's length. But I came out 10 years ago, and they said all the right things. Said they loved me no matter what. Said nothing would change. Francois paused in his pouring. And did things change, monsieur? No. I laughed bitterly. That's the thing. Nothing changed because nothing needed to change. They'd already been keeping me at a distance. Being gay was just the excuse I gave myself for why I never quite fit in. He nodded, refilled my glass, and moved on to other tables. But his question lingered. When had it started? This exclusion, this careful editing of me out of the family narrative? I thought back, wine making the memories sharper instead of blurrier. Maybe it was when I chose MIT over state, breaking the family tradition. Maybe it was when I stayed in San Francisco after graduation instead of moving back home. Maybe it was when I started making more money than my father, disrupting the careful hierarchy he'd built. Or maybe, and this thought hit me like a physical blow, maybe it had always been there. Maybe I'd always been the odd one out, the piece that didn't quite fit the family puzzle. The main course arrived as I was deep in my spiral of self-pity. turkey roulade with truffle stuffing, sweet potato puree, Brussels sprouts with pancetta. It looked like a magazine cover, too beautiful to eat. But I ate it anyway, each bite a fuck you to the family that had chosen Jennifer's dry turkey over my attempt at connection. I was halfway through the meal when I became aware of a presence beside my table. Not Francois. I'd memorized his pattern of movement. Someone new. Quite a spread for one person, a familiar voice said, and I looked up to see my grandfather standing there, wearing his good suit, the one he'd bought for my grandmother's funeral and wore to every formal occasion since. Grandpa Joe. I blinked, wondering if the wine had hit me harder than I'd thought. What are you doing here? Could ask you the same question, he said, pulling out the chair across from me without waiting for an invitation. At 89, Joseph Wright moved with the careful precision of someone who'd learned not to trust his body's first impulses. Though I suppose the answer's obvious. They didn't come. It wasn't a question. How did you know? I asked. Because I got the same treatment, he said, flagging down Francois with the imperious wave of someone who'd once commanded boardrooms. Scotch, neat. The good stuff, not the swill you serve tourists. Francois, recognizing authority when he saw it, scurried off without protest. They invited you to Jennifer's? I asked, hurt adding new layers. They'd excluded me but included him? Invited? No. His laugh was as dry as Dad's turkey. But I have my sources. Mabel Henderson lives next door to Jennifer. Saw the cars arriving, called to wish me a happy Thanksgiving and mentioned how nice it was that the whole family was gathering. The whole family except two, it seems. I don't understand, I said. Why would they? You're about to understand a lot of things, Grandpa Joe said. His scotch arrived, and he took a sip before reaching into his suit jacket. But first, I need to give you this. He placed an envelope on the table between us. Thick, legal-sized, with my name written across it in his careful script. What is this? The truth, he said simply. Or at least the start of it. Go on, open it, though you might want to finish that wine first. My hands shook slightly as I picked up the envelope. The weight of it suggested documents, multiple pages of something that would change everything. Or nothing. With my family, it was hard to tell which revelations mattered and which were just new ways to hurt. Inside, I found several documents. The first was a birth certificate. Mine, I thought, until I looked closer. The name was right, Alexander Joseph Wright. The date was right, March 15th, 1990. But the parents' names were wrong. Mother, Sarah Wright. Father, unknown. I don't understand, I said, looking up at Grandpa Joe. This says Sarah Wright. That's not Mom's name. Mom is Linda Wright. Linda is Robert's wife, Grandpa Joe said carefully. Your father's wife. But she's not your mother. The restaurant seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table, solid mahogany under my fingers, the only real thing in a world suddenly made of smoke. What are you saying? I'm saying that Sarah Wright was my daughter, your father Robert's sister. And 34 years ago, she had a baby boy she couldn't keep. I couldn't form words. That's impossible. I would know. Someone would have told me. Who? Grandpa Joe asked gently. The people who just stood you up for Thanksgiving? The family that's been keeping you at arm's length your whole life? Tell me, Alexander, haven't you always wondered why you looked nothing like your siblings? Why your baby pictures only start at 6 months old? Why there are no photos of Linda pregnant with you? I had wondered. Of course I had. But there were always explanations. I took after some distant relative. The early photos were lost in a move. Mom had been camera-shy during pregnancy. Lies. All of it lies. Keep reading, Grandpa Joe said. The next document was an adoption decree. Robert and Linda Wright formally adopting baby boy Wright, born to Sarah Wright. Closed adoption. Sealed records. All nice and legal and binding. My parents are my aunt and uncle? The words sounded insane even as I said them. Were, Grandpa Joe corrected. Sarah died when you were 2. Car accident. Or at least that's what we called it. Truth is, she drove her car off Mulholland Drive. On purpose. She'd been trying to get you back, you see. The adoption was supposed to be temporary, just until she got her life together. But Robert wouldn't give you up. Said it would confuse you. Said it would destroy his family. Said a lot of things that sounded reasonable unless you knew he'd been planning it all along. I drained my wine glass, and Francois appeared like a ghost to refill it. The restaurant continued its Thanksgiving service around us. Other families enjoying their meals, oblivious to the bomb exploding at table 12. Why? I asked. Why would they adopt me if they didn't want me? Oh, they wanted you, Grandpa Joe said bitterly. Or rather, Linda wanted you. She couldn't have more children after Marcus. Something about the delivery complications. She was desperate for another baby. And there was Robert's sister, 17 and pregnant. The family scandal that needed handling. 17, I repeated. My mother, my real mother, had been 17 when she had me. A junior in high school, honor student, had a scholarship to Berkeley all lined up. Then she met some boy at a party, and he waved his hand. You know how these stories go. He disappeared the moment she told him. Her parents, my son and his wife, were more concerned about the family reputation than their daughter's well-being. So they made her give me up. Made her? They manipulated her. Told her she was ruining her future. Told her the baby you would be better off with a stable married couple. Promised her she could be part of your life, be the loving aunt. All lies. The moment those adoption papers were signed, they cut her out. Moved to a different city. Changed their phone numbers. She spent the last 2 years of her life trying to find you. I thought about the woman I'd called Mom for 34 years. Linda Wright, with her perfect house and perfect manners and perfectly cold distance. Had she ever loved me? Or had I always been just the solution to her fertility problem, the baby she'd acquired like one of her designer handbags? There's more, Grandpa Joe said, gesturing to the envelope. Keep reading. The next document was a will. Sarah Wright's will, dated just a week before her death. I, Sarah Elizabeth Wright, being of sound mind and broken heart, leave everything I have to my son, Alexander Joseph Wright. It isn't much. I'm only 19 after all. But there's a trust fund Grandma Josephine left me and some savings bonds, and maybe by the time he reads this it'll have grown into something substantial. I hope whoever raises him tells him I loved him. I hope they tell him I tried to keep him. I hope they tell him the truth. But I know my family. I know they won't. So Grandpa Joe, if you're reading this, please, when he's old enough, tell him everything. Tell him his mother loved him more than life itself. Tell him she died trying to get back to him. Tell him he was wanted, so very wanted, just not by the people who ended up with him. All my love, Sarah. I was crying again, but differently this time. Not the bitter tears of abandonment, but the overwhelming grief of discovery. My mother had loved me. My real mother had wanted me. She died trying to get back to me. How much? I asked when I could speak again. The trust? About 10 million, give or take. Grandpa Joe's smile was sharp. Josephine Wright was old California money. Knew how to make it grow. Sarah would have been a wealthy woman if she'd lived. Now it's all yours. Has been since you turned 21, technically. But Robert's been managing it as your financial advisor. Probably told you it was family money he was investing for you. I thought about the quarterly statements I received, the ones I barely glanced at because Dad, Uncle Robert, always assured me everything was being handled. My trust fund, he'd called it, set up by my grandparents. Technically true, just not the grandparents I'd thought. They know, I said suddenly. Jennifer and Marcus. They know I'm not really their brother. They've known since high school, Grandpa Joe confirmed. Overheard Robert and Linda arguing about it. But they were told to keep quiet. Family business, you understand. Can't have scandal getting out. And that's why. Everything clicked into place. The distance, the exclusions, the carefully maintained barrier between me and the rest of the family. I wasn't their son or their brother. I was their secret, their shame, the living reminder of Sarah Wright and what they'd done to her. That's why, Grandpa Joe agreed. You want to know why they're all at Jennifer's right now instead of here? Because Linda finally told Robert about your invitation. Told him you'd reserved Chez Laurent, were spending thousands of dollars. He panicked. Thought you were planning some kind of announcement. Thought maybe you'd found out the truth somehow. So he made a few calls, moved Thanksgiving to Jennifer's, and made sure everyone knew not to tell you. But you're here. I'm here because I'm done with their lies. Done watching them treat you like a second-class citizen in your own family. Done pretending that what they did to Sarah, to you, was acceptable. Why now? I asked. Why tell me now? Because I'm 89 years old, and my cardiologist gives me optimistic estimates I don't believe. Because you deserve to know where you come from. Because Sarah deserves to have her son know she loved him. He paused, took another sip of scotch. And because I wanted to see the look on Robert's face when he realizes you know everything and he can't control the narrative anymore. I looked around the restaurant at the elaborate meal I'd planned, at the empty chairs that had seemed like rejection but were actually fear. They weren't avoiding me because they didn't care. They were avoiding me because they cared too much about their secret. What do I do with this? I asked. Whatever you want, Grandpa Joe said. The trust fund is yours. I've already had my lawyers prepare the paperwork to transfer it out of Robert's control. The truth is yours to tell or keep. The family, he shrugged. Well, they made their choice 34 years ago. Now you get to make yours. Francois appeared with dessert, a chocolate soufflé that looked too perfect to eat. He set down an extra plate without being asked, somehow sensing that the dynamics at table 12 had shifted. There's one more thing, Grandpa Joe said, pulling out his phone. Thought you might want to see this. He showed me a photo. A young woman with my eyes and my smile, holding a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. She looked exhausted but radiant, staring at the infant. At me. Like I was the most precious thing in the world. That's the only picture I have of you two together, he said. Took it myself in the hospital. Robert tried to destroy all the photos, but I kept this one. Figured someday you'd want to see it. I stared at my mother's face, memorizing every detail. 17 years old and already marked by sadness. But in that moment, holding me, she looked happy, complete, like a mother should look. Can I? I couldn't finish the question. It's yours, he said, sliding the phone across the table. I'll send you the digital file. You should have at least one photo of your real mother. We ate the soufflé in companionable silence, two family outcasts sharing a Thanksgiving meal that had started as humiliation and transformed into something else. Liberation, maybe, or just truth, which is its own kind of freedom. So what now? I asked as Francois cleared our plates. Now you decide who you want to be, Grandpa Joe said. Alexander Wright, the adopted son who never quite fit in? Or Alexander Wright, Sarah's boy, who knows exactly where he comes from and doesn't need anyone's approval to belong? What would she want? I asked. Sarah, My mother. What would she want me to do? Grandpa Joe smiled, the first genuine warmth I'd seen from him all evening. She'd want you to be happy, to live freely, to know you were loved. Everything else, the money, the family drama, the secrets, that's just noise. Your mother loved you, Alexander. Loved you enough to die trying to get you back. That's your real inheritance. The check came and I paid it without flinching. $5,000 for a family dinner where my only guest was the grandfather I'd barely known, who'd just given me the one thing money couldn't buy, the truth about who I was. As we stood to leave, Grandpa Joe gripped my shoulder. You want some advice from an old man who's made his share of mistakes? I nodded. Don't confront them yet. Take some time. Process this. Figure out what you actually want from them, if anything. The truth is a weapon, Alexander, but it's also a burden. Once you fire it, you can't take it back. What would you do? At your age? I'd have burned it all down, confronted them at Christmas dinner, made a scene, destroyed relationships that were barely relationships to begin with. He shook his head. But I'm older now. I understand that sometimes the best revenge is living well without them. You've got $10 million and the truth. That's more than most people get. We walked out together into the San Francisco evening. The city was quieter than usual. Most people inside with their families, sharing meals and creating memories. Or, in my family's case, sharing meals and perpetuating lies. You need a ride? I asked Grandpa Joe. Got my car, he said, pointing to a pristine 1970 Mustang. Sarah's car, actually. Kept it all these years. Thought maybe someday. He trailed off. Well, it's yours if you want it. Everything of hers is yours. I stared at the car, imagining my teenage mother driving it. Windows down, music blasting, her whole life ahead of her. Before me. Before the pregnancy that derailed her plans. Before the family that betrayed her. Before the desperate drive off Mulholland that ended everything. I'll think about it, I said. You do that. He started toward the car, then turned back. Oh, and Alexander? When you do decide to tell them, you know, and you will eventually remind Robert that I have copies of everything. Every document. Every letter Sarah wrote begging to see you. Every legal filing where he promised the adoption was temporary. Just in case he gets any ideas about contesting the trust fund. Would he do that? Your father, your uncle, is a pragmatist. He'll weigh the cost of fighting you against the cost of keeping quiet. $10 million is a lot of money, but the family reputation is worth more to him. Probably. He drove off in my mother's Mustang, leaving me standing on the sidewalk outside Chez Laurent, holding an envelope full of truth and a phone with one photo of the mother I'd never known. I walked to my car, a sensible Honda that suddenly seemed to represent everything safe and small about the life I'd built. A life designed not to offend, not to stand out, not to remind anyone of the family scandal I apparently represented. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Hey, missed you at dinner today. Mom said you had to work. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving anyway. Turkey. The casual lie infuriated me more than being excluded. They couldn't even be honest about their dishonesty. Had to add another layer of deception. Another coat of paint over the rotting foundation of our relationship. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at that text, crafting and deleting responses. Working. Is that what Mom told you? I was at Chez Laurent with 12 empty place settings and a $5,000 check. Delete. I know about Sarah. Delete. Enjoy your turkey. Choke on it. Delete. In the end, I didn't respond at all. Let her wonder. Let them all of how small I'd made myself trying to fit into their lives. I poured myself a drink, good scotch like Grandpa Joe would approve of, and spread the documents across my coffee table. Birth certificate, adoption papers, Sarah's will. Each one a piece of the puzzle that was my life. The picture finally coming clear after 34 years of confusion. I picked up the photo on my phone, zooming in on Sarah's face. My mother, 17 years old, holding her baby, not knowing she had less than 2 years left to live. Not knowing her son would grow up calling another woman mom. Not knowing her brother would steal not just her child but her legacy, her money, her very existence from family history. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her image. "I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I couldn't find you." But even as I said it, I realized the apology was backwards. I wasn't the one who needed to be sorry. I was the child, the innocent, the one who'd been lied to and manipulated and kept at arm's length by people who knew exactly why they were doing it. The anger, when it came, was pure and clean and powerful. Not the hurt confusion of being stood up for Thanksgiving. That was nothing compared to this. This was rage at the cosmic injustice of it all. At Robert and Linda for their theft. At Jennifer and Marcus for their complicity. At every family gathering where I'd felt like an outsider because I was an outsider, just not in the way I'd thought. I called in sick the next day. And the day after that. Told my startup I had a family emergency, which was true in every way that mattered. I spent those days researching, digging into public records, piecing together the life and death of Sarah Wright. She'd been brilliant. Honor roll, debate team, early admission to Berkeley. She'd wanted to be a journalist, had already been published in the school paper and local magazines. The pregnancy had derailed everything, but even then, she'd tried. Gotten her GED, enrolled in community college, written letters to the editor about teen pregnancy resources and adoption reform, all while trying to get her son back. I found the court records. Petition after petition filed by Sarah Wright for visitation rights. All denied. Robert had good lawyers and a stable home. Sarah was a teenage mother with a history of depression. The court saw an easy decision. The depression had gotten worse after each denial. Hospital records showed 2 suicide attempts before the final one. Each time she'd left notes. Not suicide notes, letters to me. Letters I'd never received. Letters that probably went straight to Robert's shredder. By the time Monday rolled around, I'd made my decision. Not about confronting the family, Grandpa Joe was right, that required more thought. But about everything else. I walked into my boss's office and quit. No notice, no transition plan, just, I'm done. When he sputtered about contracts and obligations, I laughed. I just found out my entire life is a lie. My family stole me from my mother and let her die trying to get me back. I've got bigger problems than your software launch. The trust fund transfer went through that afternoon. $10 million moved from Robert's control to mine in a series of digital signatures. He called within an hour. "Alexander, what the hell do you think you're doing? Taking control of my inheritance," I said calmly. "You know, the one from my mother, my real mother, Sarah." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I don't know what you think you know," he started. "I know everything, Robert. Or should I call you Uncle Robert? I'm still figuring out the protocol here. You need to come over. We need to discuss this as a family." "Family?" I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to me. "We're not family. Family doesn't steal babies. Family doesn't let teenage girls die of despair. Family shows up for fucking Thanksgiving dinner." "Alexander." I hung up. The calls started immediately. Linda, not mom. Never mom again. Jennifer. Marcus. Even Aunt Patricia, who'd apparently been looped into the emergency. I let them all go to voicemail, listened to their messages with clinical detachment. "Alexander, sweetheart, please call me back. We can explain everything. Bro, I don't know what Grandpa told you, but you need to hear our side. Alex, this is exactly why we didn't tell you. We knew you'd overreact. Overreact. To finding out my entire identity was a lie. To learning my birth mother died trying to get me back. To discovering the people I'd called family had conspired to keep me ignorant and isolated for 34 years. If anything, I was underreacting. I hired movers to pack my apartment, put my furniture in storage, booked a one-way ticket to Paris because why not? I had $10 million and no obligations to anyone. Might as well use Sarah's money to see the world she'd never gotten to explore. But first, I had one stop to make. Mulholland Drive is beautiful in the early morning, mist clinging to the hills, the city spread out below like a promise. I found the spot. Grandpa Joe had given me the exact location, marked it on a map with an X like buried treasure. There was no memorial. No cross or flowers or indication that a 19-year-old girl had driven off this cliff in despair. Just a guardrail that had been replaced sometime in the last 32 years, slightly newer than its neighbors. I'd brought flowers, sunflowers, because something about them seemed right. Young and bright and turning always toward the light, like I imagined she'd been before they broke her. "Hi, Mom," I said, feeling foolish but needing to say it. "I'm Alexander, your son. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." I told her everything. About my life, my job, the Thanksgiving dinner that had led me to the truth. About Grandpa Joe and the envelope and the photo I'd already had printed and framed. About the money and what I planned to do with it. "I'm going to travel," I told her. "See all the places you wanted to see. Write the stories you wanted to write. Live the life they stole from both of us. And when I'm ready, when I've figured out who I am outside of their lies, I'll come back and decide what to do about them." A car passed, slowing slightly at the sight of a man talking to a guardrail. I didn't care. Let them think I was crazy. Maybe I was. Maybe finding out your entire life is fiction makes you a little crazy. "I love you," I said finally. "I know that's weird to say when we never met, not really. But I look at that photo, and I can see it in your eyes. You loved me, and somehow, across 34 years and all their lies, I can feel it. I love you too." I left the flowers wedged against the guardrail and drove back down the mountain. At the bottom, my phone had 17 new messages. I deleted them all without listening. At the airport, waiting for my flight, I texted Grandpa Joe, "Thank you. For everything. For the truth. For keeping her memory alive. For showing up when no one else would." He responded immediately, "She would be proud of you. Hell, I'm proud of you. Go live your life, kid. The rest of this mess will still be here when you're ready to deal with it." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "What I should have done 30 years ago. Tell everyone the truth. Burn down their house of lies. Watch them scramble to maintain their precious reputation when everyone knows what they did to their own daughter. Won't that hurt you too? Your reputation? I'm 89 years old. What do I care about reputation? My daughter is dead because I didn't protect her from her own family. My grandson grew up thinking he wasn't wanted because I kept my mouth shut. Time to balance the scales. The flight to Paris was called. I stood, gathering my single carry-on bag. Everything else was in storage, waiting for me to figure out who Alexander Wright was going to be now that he knew who he'd always been. My phone rang one last time. "Jennifer." I almost ignored it, but something, curiosity maybe, or just the habit of 34 years, made me answer. "Alex, thank God. We've been so worried." "Where are you?" "The airport." "The airport? Why?" "Alex, please just come over. Let us explain. It's not what you think." "What do I think, Jennifer?" "You think we're monsters. You think we stole you and lied to you and maybe we did, but it was complicated. Mom couldn't have more kids. Aunt Sarah was so young. It seemed like the best solution for everyone. Everyone except Sarah. She was unstable, Alex. The pregnancy, it did something to her. She wasn't capable of raising a child. She was 17. Of course she was scared and overwhelmed. She needed help, not to have her baby stolen. We didn't steal you. Then why is she dead? My voice rose, drawing stares from other travelers. Why did she drive off a cliff at 19? Why are there court records of her begging for visitation rights? Why did I grow up feeling like I didn't belong in my own family? Alex! She was crying now. We loved you. We did. We didn't know how to tell you. And the longer it went on, the harder it got. And Mom and Dad said it would only hurt you to know. No, I said quietly. It hurt me not to know. Every exclusion, every time you all gathered without me, every family joke I didn't get. That hurt. Finding out the truth, that set me free. What are you going to do? Live my life. Travel. Right? Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be Robert and Linda Wright's disappointing son. When I'm not begging for scraps of belonging from people who knew I'd never truly belong. You did belong. You were our brother. Was I? Then where were you on Thanksgiving? Silence. That's what I thought. The boarding call for first class echoed through the terminal. I have to go. Alex, wait. Please. We can fix this. We can be a real family now, no more secrets. We were never a real family, Jennifer. Real families don't have birth certificates hidden in safes. Real families don't have mothers who die of grief at 19. Real families show up for Thanksgiving dinner. We're sorry about that. Dad panicked. He thought. I know what he thought. And he was right. I was going to announce something. I was going to raise a toast to family, to belonging, to finally feeling like I'd found my place with you all. Funny how that worked out. Alex. My name is Alexander, I said. Alexander Joseph Wright, son of Sarah Wright, grandson of Joseph Wright. And I don't need your family anymore. I have her memory, and that's enough. I hung up and turned off my phone. Boarded the plane with a strange sense of lightness, like I'd been carrying weights I didn't know about and had finally set them down. As the plane lifted off, San Francisco falling away below, I pulled out the photo of Sarah and me, my mother and her son, together for such a brief moment before the world tore us apart. But we were together in that moment. She'd loved me in that moment. And 34 years later, sitting in first class with her inheritance finally in my hands, I was determined to honor that love by living the kind of free, authentic life she'd never gotten the chance to live. The flight attendant offered champagne. I took it, raised a silent toast to Sarah Wright, and flew toward a future that was finally truly mine. Paris in November was cold and gray and perfect. I rented an apartment in the Marais, a cramped 6th-floor walk-up that cost a fortune and had a view of rooftops and chimney pots that looked like a postcard. I spent my days walking, sitting in cafes, writing in a notebook like the cliché American tourist I was. But I was writing. For the first time in my life, I was putting words on paper that weren't code or emails or performance reviews. I was writing about Sarah, about family, about the lies we tell to protect ourselves and the truths that set us free. Grandpa Joe emailed me updates on the chaos back home. He'd started his campaign of truth, reaching out to old family friends, distant relatives, anyone who'd known Sarah. The story spread like wildfire through their social circle. The respectable Wright family, who'd stolen their own daughter's baby and let her die of grief. The successful Robert Wright, who'd been controlling his nephew's trust fund while pretending to be his father. The damage to their reputation was swift and brutal. Linda's charity boards asked her to step down. Robert's country club membership was quietly not renewed. Jennifer's perfect Instagram life was suddenly full of deleted comments and lost followers. They're threatening to sue me for defamation, Grandpa Joe wrote. I told them to go ahead. Truth is an absolute defense. Are you okay? I wrote back, "Best I've felt in years. Should have done this decades ago. Your mother deserved better than our silence." I stayed in Paris through Christmas, watching the lights go up on the Champs-Élysées, drinking mulled wine at the Christmas markets. My phone stayed off. My email went unchecked except for Grandpa Joe's messages. I was a ghost, haunting my own life from across an ocean. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my tiny apartment, watching fireworks explode over the Eiffel Tower, and made a decision. I'd been running for 2 months. It was time to stop, not to go back, never that, but to move forward with purpose. I started a blog, Letters to Sarah, I called it. Each post was a letter to my dead mother, telling her about my life, my travels, my thoughts on family and belonging in truth. It was therapeutic for me, but it resonated with others too. Other adoptees, other family outcasts, other people who discovered their lives were built on lies. The blog grew, slowly at first, then faster as people shared their own stories in the comments. Children who'd discovered they were adopted, parents who'd been cut off from their kids, siblings separated by family feuds. All of us trying to make sense of the families we'd been given versus the families we'd chosen. I traveled more. London, Rome, Tokyo, Sydney. Each city a new letter to Sarah, a new chapter in the life she'd never gotten to live. I took her with me in spirit, imagining what she would have seen, what stories she would have told. The trust fund made it all possible. $10 million was more than I could spend in a lifetime of travel and writing. So I started giving it away. Scholarships for teenage mothers, legal aid for parents fighting for custody, mental health resources for people dealing with family trauma, all in Sarah Wright's name. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, I got an email from Marcus. "Alex, I know you don't want to hear from any of us. I get it. What Mom and Dad did was fucked up. What we all did by keeping quiet was fucked up. But I wanted you to know that I left, moved out, cut contact, started therapy to deal with my own shit about all this. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a relationship or anything. I just wanted you to know that someone in this family finally stood up to them. Too late. I know. But Sarah was my aunt too, and what they did to her, to you, wasn't right. I'm sorry I wasn't a better brother. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you when it mattered. I'm sorry for Thanksgiving and every other time we excluded you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If not, I understand. Either way, I hope you're finding peace." Grandpa Joe died. 90 years old, heart attack in his sleep. His lawyer contacted me. I'd been named executor of his estate, much to Robert's fury. I flew back for the funeral, my first time in American soil since I'd left. The service was small. Most of Grandpa Joe's contemporaries were already gone. Robert and Linda sat in the front row, looking older, smaller, diminished. They'd lost weight, lost their glow of prosperity. The scandal had cost them more than reputation. Robert's business had suffered, clients fleeing the controversy. Jennifer was there with her husband, her perfect appearance slightly frayed at the edges. Marcus sat alone in the back, catching my eye and nodding slightly. A few distant relatives filled out the small chapel, all carefully avoiding eye contact with either me or Robert's family. I gave the eulogy, talked about Grandpa Joe's integrity, his loyalty to truth even when it cost him, his love for his granddaughter Sarah and his determination to see her memory honored, his courage in finally speaking up, even decades too late. Joseph Wright believed in truth, I said, looking directly at Robert. He believed that secrets were poison, that lies compounded into tragedy. He spent the last year of his life making amends for staying silent when he should have spoken. He died with a clear conscience, having finally told the truth about Sarah Wright and what was done to her. Robert's face was stone. Linda wept silently. Jennifer stared at her hands. Marcus watched me with something like pride. After the service, I tried to leave quickly, but Linda intercepted me at the door. "Alexander," she said, and I was struck by how much she'd aged. The perfect hair was gray at the roots. The designer suit hung loose on her frame. "Please, can we talk? Just for a minute." I could have walked away. Should have, probably. But something in her eyes, real pain, real regret, made me pause. "1 minute," I said. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I know that's not enough. I know it can never be enough. But I need you to know that I loved you. Not the way I should have. Not the way Sarah would have. But as much as I was capable of loving anything I'd stolen." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Because I was selfish. Because I wanted a baby and couldn't have one. Because when Robert suggested it, it seemed like the perfect solution. Sarah was so young, so unprepared. We had everything a child could need. I told myself we were helping everyone. You were helping yourself." "Yes. And when Sarah started fighting for you, when she wouldn't just disappear like we'd expected, I got scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of the truth coming out. So I let Robert handle it, and he was thorough. Too thorough. He drove her to suicide." "I know." Tears ran down her face, ruining carefully applied makeup. "I know, and I have to live with that. We destroyed that girl, and we destroyed you too, in a different way. Made you feel unwanted in your own home because we were terrified of you finding out why you were there. What do you want from me?" I asked. "Forgiveness? Absolution? I can't give you that." "No," she said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't you. The distance, the coldness, the exclusions, none of it was because of who you are. You were a wonderful child, a wonderful man. We were just too poisoned by our own guilt to let you close enough to see it." I left her standing there, crying in her funeral black, and went to settle Grandpa Joe's estate. He'd left me everything. The house, the cars, the remaining money. But more importantly, he'd left me a box of Sarah's things he'd been hiding for 34 years. Her journals, photos, school essays, poetry, a whole life compressed into a banker's box, waiting for her son to find it. I spent the next week in a hotel room, reading my mother's words. She'd been funny, sarcastic, brilliant. Her journal entries from before the pregnancy showed a girl with enormous dreams and the talent to achieve them. After, they showed a mother fighting desperately for her child, slowly losing hope as the legal system failed her again and again. The last entry was dated 2 days before her death. They won. Robert's lawyers filed another motion, and the judge won't even hear my petition for visitation. My own son is 40 miles away, and I can't see him, can't hold him, can't tell him I love him. I dream about him every night. What he looks like now. Is he walking? Talking? Does he have my eyes or his father's? Does he laugh easily or is he serious like I've become? I write letters I can't send. Buy toys I can't give him. Plan a future we'll never have. I can't do this anymore. The pain is too much, but I also can't leave. What if he needs me someday? What if he comes looking for his real mother? So I stay. I hurt. I hope. Even though hope is killing me slowly, one denied petition at a time. I love you, Alexander. Whatever they tell you, whoever you become, know that your mother loved you more than life itself. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I loved you too much to live without you. I flew back to Paris with Sarah's box, her journals, her life, added her words to my blog, with context and commentary. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people sharing their own stories of family separation, adoption trauma, parental alienation. A publisher reached out. Was I interested in turning the blog into a book? A memoir about discovering the truth, finding my mother in her words, rebuilding my identity from the ashes of family lies? I spent 6 months writing letters to Sarah, a son's search for his lost mother. It was painful, cathartic, necessary. I included everything: the Thanksgiving dinner, Grandpa Joe's revelation, Sarah's journals, the family fallout. Robert tried to stop publication, claiming defamation and invasion of privacy. But truth, as Grandpa Joe had said, is an absolute defense. The book came out to critical acclaim and commercial success. Book tours, interviews, speaking engagements at adoption reform conferences. Through it all, I kept traveling, kept writing letters to Sarah. The money from the book went into the Sarah Wright Foundation, expanding its reach. We funded legal challenges to closed adoption laws, supported family preservation programs, created resources for adoptees searching for their truth. 2 years after Thanksgiving, Marcus reached out again. He was in therapy, he said, working through his own issues about family and complicity. He'd read my book, cried through most of it. Could we meet? Just coffee, no expectations? I was in New York for a conference, so I agreed. We met at a small cafe in Brooklyn, both of us nervous, circling each other like wary dogs. You look good, he said. Healthy. Happy. I am, I said. For the first time in my life, I actually am. I'm glad. He stirred his coffee obsessively. I wanted to tell you about Mom and Dad. They're not doing well. I know. Dad's drinking got bad after the book came out. Mom left him 6 months ago. Moved in with her sister in Florida. Jennifer's getting divorced. Trevor couldn't handle the scandal. The Wright family dynasty, such as it was, is pretty much done. How do you feel about that? He laughed bitterly. Relieved? Guilty? Angry that it took destroying you and killing Sarah to finally blow it all up? I don't know. My therapist says it's complicated. Everything about our family is complicated. We're not family, he said quietly. Not really. I'm your cousin who pretended to be your brother while knowing the truth. That's not family. That's conspiracy. We talked for 2 hours. Not reconciling, exactly, but reaching a kind of understanding. He was working with adoption reform groups now, using his law degree to help families stay together. A kind of penance, he said, for all the years he'd stayed silent. I dream about her sometimes, he said as we were leaving. Sarah. I was only 6 when she died, but I remember her. She used to sneak me candy when Mom wasn't looking. Let me read her journals. Not the heavy stuff, just her poetry and stories. She was going to teach me to drive in that old Mustang. Grandpa Joe left me the Mustang, I said. It's in storage. I haven't been able to drive it yet. She'd want you to, Marcus said. She loved that car. Said it was freedom on wheels. The one thing our parents couldn't control. He paused. Maybe that's what you were too. The one thing they couldn't control. The part of Sarah that survived despite everything they did. I flew back to Paris, but something had shifted. The anger that had fueled me for 2 years was starting to transform into something else. Not forgiveness. Some things are unforgivable. But understanding, maybe, or just exhaustion with carrying the weight of their sins. On the 3rd anniversary of that Thanksgiving dinner, I was back in San Francisco. Not to see them. Robert and Linda had moved away, unable to maintain their presence in a city that knew their shame. But to visit Sarah's grave, which Grandpa Joe had finally marked with a proper headstone. Sarah Elizabeth Wright, beloved daughter, mother, and dreamer 1973 to 1992, truth is the only foundation that lasts. I'd brought sunflowers again, and the manuscript of my book to leave at her grave. Proof that her story had been told, that her son had found her, that her love had survived every attempt to bury it. I did it, Mom, I told her headstone. I found you. Found the truth. told the world what they did to us. And you know what? We won. Not because they suffered, though they did, but because I finally know who I am. Alexander Joseph Wright, Sarah's son. Loved, wanted, fought for until the very end. A hand touched my shoulder. I turned to find Jennifer standing there, looking nervous and worn. She'd lost the polished perfection, replaced by something more real, more human. "Hi," she said. "Marcus told me you'd be here. I hope it's okay." "What do you want, Jennifer?" "To apologize. To Sarah. To you." She knelt by the grave, placed her own flowers, daisies, next to mine. "I was 13 when you were born. Old enough to know something was wrong about the whole situation. But I was also Linda Wright's daughter, trained to keep family secrets and maintain appearances." "You were a child," I said, surprising myself with the generosity. "It wasn't your responsibility." "Maybe not then. But later? When I was 20, 25, 30? When I watched them exclude you over and over? When I participated in it?" She shook her head. "I'm in therapy now too, trying to understand how I became someone who could sit at Thanksgiving dinner knowing my brother was waiting alone at a restaurant. Trying to figure out if there's any way to make amends for that." "There isn't," I said gently. "Some things can't be fixed, Jen. They can only be acknowledged and learned from." She nodded, wiping away tears. "I know. I wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. The cruelty, the lies, the way we sacrificed you and Sarah to maintain our perfect family image. And I'm sorry. Not expecting forgiveness, just sorry." We stood together at Sarah's grave, two products of the Wright family dysfunction, trying to make sense of the wreckage. After a while, Jennifer left, touching my shoulder briefly in goodbye. I stayed until sunset, watching the light fade over the cemetery, thinking about family and truth and the long journey from that Thanksgiving dinner to this moment of not peace, exactly, but clarity, understanding. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Alexander, this is Linda. I know you don't want to hear from me, but today is the anniversary, and I wanted you to know that I think about that Thanksgiving every day. About you sitting alone at that restaurant while we all participated in the cruelest lie. There's no excuse for what we did. No justification. Just regret that will follow me to my grave. I hope you found the family you deserve, even if it couldn't be us. You deserved so much better than what we gave you." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that hadn't been said in lawyers' offices and book pages and therapy sessions. But I saved the text, evidence that even Linda Wright could learn to tell the truth, even if it came decades too late. I drove to the storage unit where I'd been keeping the Mustang, opened the door to find it exactly as Grandpa Joe had maintained it. Pristine, waiting, a 1970 time capsule of Sarah's truncated youth. The keys were in the glove box along with her registration, her insurance card, a parking ticket from 1992 that she'd never gotten to pay. Normal teenage detritus that had become artifacts of a life cut short. The engine turned over on the first try. Grandpa Joe had kept it running all these years, waiting for this moment. I drove out of the storage unit and into the San Francisco evening, following the same road Sarah had driven, windows down, radio playing classic rock like she would have heard. I drove to Chez Laurent, parked outside, looked at the windows where 3 years ago I'd waited for a family that chose cruelty over kindness. The restaurant was busy, full of families having normal dinners. No idea of the drama that had unfolded at table 12. My phone rang. "Marcus." "Hey," he said. "I know this is weird, but I'm in town for a case. Want to grab dinner? No pressure, just, it's the anniversary, and I thought maybe neither of us should be alone." I looked at the restaurant where everything had started. Thought about Sarah, about Grandpa Joe, about the long, strange journey from rejection to truth. Yeah, I said. I know a place. Chez Laurent. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. Isn't that where? Where everything changed. Yeah. Seems appropriate, doesn't it? Full circle and all that. If you're sure. I'm sure. Table for two this time. No illusions about anyone else showing up. I drove Sarah's Mustang to the restaurant, parked in the same spot I'd parked 3 years ago. But everything was different now. I wasn't Alexander Wright, desperate for family approval. I was Alexander Wright, Sarah's son, walking into a restaurant with my mother's strength in my spine and my grandfather's truth in my heart. Marcus was already there, looking as nervous as I felt. We sat at a small table by the window, not table 12. That would have been too much, and ordered drinks. To Sarah, he said, raising his glass. And to Grandpa Joe. And to truth, even when it hurts. To truth, I agreed. We drank, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because I'd found my family, that ship had sailed, hit an iceberg, and sunk to depths no salvage operation could reach, but because I'd found myself in the wreckage. Alexander Joseph Wright, son of Sarah, truth teller, bridge builder, survivor. The waiter approached, and I smiled. We're ready to order, I said. And this time, everyone who's supposed to be here showed up. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't family reconciliation. It wasn't a happy ending tied up with a bow. It was just two cousins sharing a meal, acknowledging the past, and carefully, tentatively, building something new from the ashes of what had been burned. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, I think Sarah was watching. Her son and her nephew, sitting in the restaurant where the truth had finally caught up with the lies. Not healing, exactly. Some wounds go too deep for that. But moving forward, which is its own kind of miracle. The bill came, and I paid it without flinching. Not $5,000 this time, just the price of 2 dinners and honest conversation. Marcus offered to split it, but I waved him off. I've got it, I said. Call it interest on a debt paid. Sarah would want me to buy you dinner. How do you know? I smiled, thinking of her journals, her fierce love, her broken heart. Because she loved you. Even at 17, even overwhelmed with her own problems. She wrote about her little nephew Marcus and how she wanted to be part of your life. They took that from her too. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm going to name my daughter Sarah. When I have one. If I have one. Someone should carry her name forward. She'd like that, I said. We walked out together into the San Francisco night. 3 years ago, I'd left this restaurant broken and alone. Now I left it whole, if scarred, with the beginning of something that might not be family but might be enough. Same time next year? Marcus asked as we reached our cars. Maybe, I said. Let's see where we are. I drove home in Sarah's Mustang, windows down despite the cold, feeling her presence in every curve of the road. At my new apartment, bought with book proceeds, decorated with photos of my travels, my real life, I sat down at my computer and opened a new document. Dear Sarah, I typed. Today marks 3 years since I learned the truth about us. 3 years since Grandpa Joe handed me that envelope and changed everything. 3 years since I stopped being Robert and Linda's disappointment and started being your son. I want to tell you what's happened since then. How your story became a bestseller. How your foundation has helped hundreds of families. How Marcus is trying to make amends. How even Linda has learned to speak truth, though it comes too late to matter. But mostly I want to tell you that I'm okay. More than okay. I'm free. Free to be myself, to tell our story, to live the life you wanted for both of us. I travel the world with your spirit. I write with your voice echoing in my mind. I love with the fierce intensity you showed in those few months we had together. They thought they could bury you, silence you, erase you from the family history. But love like yours doesn't die. It just waits, patient as truth, for someone to discover it. I discovered it, Mom, in a restaurant on Thanksgiving, in an envelope from Grandpa Joe, in journals hidden in a box, in a Mustang that still smells faintly of your perfume. You fought for me until you couldn't fight anymore. Now I fight for you, for your memory, your truth, your love that survived every attempt to kill it. Rest easy, Sarah Elizabeth Wright. Your son knows who he is. Your son knows he was loved. Your son is free. And that's the greatest gift a mother could give. All my love, Alexander. I posted it to the blog, the latest in hundreds of letters to Sarah. The comments came quickly. Other adoptees, other seekers of truth, other children of complicated families finding solace in shared pain and shared healing. Outside, San Francisco glittered with promise and possibility. Somewhere across the city, the Wright family was scattered, dealing with the consequences of their choices. Somewhere, Marcus was probably reading the blog, planning his own journey toward redemption. Somewhere, other families were keeping secrets that would eventually come to light. But in my apartment, surrounded by truth and memory and the hard-won piece of self-knowledge, I was exactly where I belonged. Not at anyone's table, begging for scraps of acceptance, but at my own table, feast laid with honesty and freedom and the unshakable knowledge that I had been loved by someone who gave everything to try to keep me. That's my inheritance. That's my identity. That's my truth. And it's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're like me, someone who spent years trying to earn love that was never truly offered, you know these aren't just stories. They're mirrors of our deepest wounds and greatest triumphs. Subscribe if these stories resonate with your journey. Hit that notification bell. Think of it as our regular meetup, where we share truths that others might not understand. And please, leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? What would you have done in my shoes? Your words matter to me, and they matter to everyone here who's walked this lonely path. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another story. Until then, remember, family isn't always blood, and sometimes the greatest gift is discovering who you truly are. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.